All right, now we're going to start in Revelation 13, enter the beast. Actually, Revelation 13 is also about two beasts that are entering into the picture. So, I hope everybody has had some coffee at least, so the food you just ate won't put you to sleep, but I promise I'll do my best to keep you awake. So I stood on the sand of the sea, which is symbolic of humanity. And I saw a beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns 10 crowns, and on his heads a blasphemous name. Then it defines this beast also. As I saw, this beast was like a leopard, which happens to be with this quickness. It also had feet like a bear, which speaks to the powerfulness of this person. And the mouth like the mouth of a lion, like a roaring lion that has a kingly roar, which is what this Antichrist will have. And it says that the dragon, which is Satan, gave him his power, his throne, and great authority. Now remember that when Jesus was being tempted in the wilderness by Satan, Satan offered him the kingdoms of the world. Now we know judicially the kingdoms of the world belong to God. However, when it says that Satan is the god of this world, he did get access to the forfeiting that Adam and Eve had given over to him of being over, the viceroy being over the world. And so he could actually hand these kingdoms to him. And Jesus, of course, didn't accept that. But my point being is that Satan has blinded the minds of men all over the world, of mankind. And so he has this authority. And I saw one of his heads as if it had been mortally wounded, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world marveled and followed the beast. So they worshiped the dragon who gave authority to the beast, and they worshiped the beast, saying, "Who is like the beast, and who is able to make war with him?" And he was given a mouth, speaking great things, blasphemous, and he was given authority to continue for 42 months. Then he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name, his tabernacle, and those who dwell in heaven. So his pride knew no bounds. He's blaspheming the church on earth, blaspheming the church in heaven. And it was granted to him. Now, when I was really sold on pre-trib and really taught during that time that we will not suffer any tribulation, we won't go through it because we will be raptured out, I then kept stumbling on verses like this, but wait a minute, how does that work with this? It was granted to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them, and authority was given him over every tribe, tongue, and nation. So that, and I saw this also in Daniel's prophecy regarding the end of the age, and so, wait a minute, I guess there will be saints in the tribulation period. There will be saints that won't be able to go past and through all that. And all who dwell on the earth will worship him, whose names have not been written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. And if anyone has an ear, let him hear. Remember I said in the 7 churches that John wrote a letter to, he always ended with, let him who has an ear to hear, let him hear what the Spirit is saying to the churches. Here, the Spirit is taken out of the picture. It only just says, let him hear. Because this is a time in which the Spirit is no longer restraining and refraining its force. And here it says, he who leads in captivity shall go into captivity. So there will be people captivated. He who kills with a sword must be killed with a sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints, which is going to be required of the saints that are going to be entering into this tribulation period. Now let me just kind of break this down, beginning with Daniel. Daniel is the companion volume. Daniel is like the foundation of the book of Revelation and understanding how the events unfold in the book of Revelation. So in Daniel chapter 2, Nebuchadnezzar had a dream about this statue, and it was a head of gold, and then arms and shoulder of silver, and then thigh and stomach of bronze, and then iron mixed with clay here. So it's representing these nations that Daniel was foretelling. Babylon, Medo-Persia, It was a co-ruling reign of two kings, Media and Persia. And then this represented Greece. The legs of iron represented Rome. And then the last days kingdom will be a 10-kingdom world leading. 10 toes. And so then he had a revelation in Daniel 7 and also 8 where he saw this representing Babylon, the lion, the bear representing Medo-Persia, and then this leopard representing Greece, and then this fierce beast here representing Rome. And in the last days, there's one horn that's going to be coming out of this Roman Empire, which we're still influenced by the way. Our country is influenced, the world is still influenced by the aftermath of Rome's ideology. So we have all these ideologies of world empires, starting with Egypt, then Assyria, then Babylon, then Medo-Persia, then Greece, then Rome, and then the last day culmination of a 10-kingdom empire that will be headed and ruled by the Antichrist himself. 10 kingdoms. So this shows the ram and the goat and a horn coming out, and this little horn that's got a blasphemous mouth. There's the big mouth horn. That's the Antichrist that's going to rise up and blaspheme God, as we were just reading here. So let's proceed. I have this in your possession, or I have it there for you. I did this in 1983 for the Bible college I was teaching. And I have this breakdown of Daniel's 70-week prophecy. And Daniel began to prophesy about what was going to happen for a total of 490 years, which would be 70 weeks of sevens. So what we have is the first 7 weeks took place in the restoration period from the time that Cyrus gave the decree to go forth and restore and rebuild the temple. And then when that wrapped up, then we began the next 62 weeks that comes right up to the anointing of the Messiah at the River Jordan. That's Jesus. So 69 weeks are done historically that he was predicting towards the future, towards the coming of the Messiah. So there's 1 week left. So we have the first half of that week in the ministry of Jesus. He's confirming the gospel covenant originating in the Abrahamic covenant. In the midst of the week, the Messiah is cut off, but not for himself. And he makes reconciliation. He's crucified for our sins. And he causes the Old Testament sacrifice and oblations to cease. So that leaves the last half week of Daniel's 70-week prophecy, which there is this breach gap here, the church age, and we put that now, the last half of the Daniel 70th week here, in which the last 3.5 years, all of this is happening, from Revelation 11 to 18 to 19 when Jesus comes back. And then the kingdom age coming, the Christian millennium. This wraps up Daniel's 70-week prophecy to finish the transgression, to make an end of sins, to bring in an everlasting righteousness, no more sinners, and to seal up the vision and the prophecy that Daniel had, and to anoint the most holy, which would be that 1,000-year reign that he is going to rule over. This is how I lay this out. Now, we're in chapter 13. We didn't read about the second beast yet, but the Antichrist, one of his heads his head is slain, or he was wounded in his head. It's a resurrection from a fatal wound. I believe that's why the world will marvel. See, Jesus obviously was raised from the dead. The Antichrist is going to have a similar situation going on here by the power and the authority of Satan, and he's going to rule over a one-world government for 42 months. He's going to make war on the saints. And there is this other beast that's involved in helping him with this. So in verse 11, I saw another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb and spoke like a dragon. Now, I believe horns always speaks to that of authority. and basically political or religious authority. And I believe that these two horns that this second beast has is he will be the dominant force and kind of like the chancellor or the prime minister of religion and commerce, because he's going to rule over both. Religion and commerce are going to go hand in hand in the last days. As I said, you can never separate religion from politics. It's always going to be in the play of things. A politician is always going to go after a religious base to the best that they're able to do. They need that voting block because it's always going to exist. And in the last days, the Antichrist will utilize the religious bloc to get behind him and to support him in all kinds of things. And that is going to be a worldwide church in which will help him help him find out and ferret out who the real Christians are, because it will be, they use the term now, fake news. This is fake church. The harlot church is what will be. But he will use that. And the second dragon will really be a false prophet that works in tandem with him. And he will exercise, verse 12, all the authority of the first beast in his presence, and causes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast whose deadly wound was healed. So this is part of what's going to be a marvelous thing. They're going to operate in lying signs and wonders. That's what, remember, we read in 2 Thessalonians, the coming of the lawless one will come with lying, deception, and false wonders, lying signs and wonders. There'll be real lying signs and wonders. They're just the false kind leading to the wrong person. He performs great signs so that he even makes fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. Remember, Moses and Elijah will be walking around for that 3.5 years. They will be able to consume anybody that tries to harm them with fire coming forth from their mouth. In the same way, Jannes and Jambres, who withstood Moses and Aaron before the throne of Egypt, when Moses threw the stick down and it became a snake, they threw their sticks down and they became snakes. So see, they could do what Moses did. Who is their source? Satan. But Moses' snake ate their snakes. This is to show, hey, God's got this. He's over this. But my point here is that the enemy, Satan, will have lying signs, miraculous lying signs and wonders. He has that ability and will do that through the Antichrist and through the false prophet. So they're going to be able to do that, even to make fire come down from heaven on the earth and in the sight of men. So let's say Moses and Elijah are standing before the false prophet and giving them grief, he and the Antichrist, and he's, some kind of fire demonstration, and the false prophet says, I can do that too. So there's going to be this confusion in the last days regarding why these beasts, the Antichrist and the false prophet, has all this power. Certainly, they are who they say they are. Certainly, this confirms that. And so, surely we should believe them. So we have to be careful when we're talking about signs and wonders. Just because someone can do signs and wonders doesn't necessarily mean that it's coming from the right source. We have to always go back to what does the word say, and does it line up, and who does it point to? See, a sign and wonder is like a sign on the road that is pointing to a destination, pointing to a direction. It's instructing, it's guiding. And the signs and wonders that follow the gospel message is all supposed to point to Jesus. But if it's pointing to the Antichrist, then that's the lying signs and wonders you want to avoid. So he deceives the whole earth by those signs which he is granted to do in the sight of the beast, telling those who dwell on earth to make an image to the beast who was wounded by the sword and lived. Look, he rose from the dead. This is our new world leader. Look at all the mess our world is in right now because of the trumpets and all that's going on. Let's rally together. The 10 kingdoms and the church, the world church, that's the false church, they are working together. Religion and commerce, they throw in all their support in behind the beast because they need him and he needs them. And they need each other. It's an unholy alliance. But there is this great need. Just like communism and Islamism is an unholy alliance, but they need each other to fulfill their ultimate goal. So what we have right now is this granting to make this, they do this, they make the image of the beast, and he was granted power to give breath to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause as many as would not worship the image of the beast to be killed. Now, this, if I were to take this literally, that means that this image, and I'm really speaking to my age right now. When I was a kid, I loved this movie called Jason and the Argonauts. And I loved that movie. And remember, they were kind of pilfering the treasure trove underneath this giant, and all of a sudden he starts moving, or he comes up out of the ground. I can't remember exactly how it is, and he starts moving. And then he comes after Jason and the Argonaut, so however that is. But I'm looking at this picture of what's just described. So here's the image of the Antichrist that's made. There's got to be, the world is able to see this somehow. Perhaps there wasn't enough damage done to the earth that all electricity was knocked out, but yet it could have been. I don't know how this is going to happen, but it says here, by the image, he's going to make the whole world worship the Antichrist. So, and this image is going to be able to speak, and it's going to be able to cause many to worship him. Now, I don't believe necessarily that this is that they just got one great big loud speaker in his mouth and he's speaking. There is some kind of motion going on. This image comes alive somehow, and he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their foreheads, and that no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark of the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here's the wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. His number is 666. 6 is the number of man, and that it was on the sixth day that God created man. And the fact that it's 3 sixes, man is made of man is a tripart being. We are made of body, soul, and spirit. And so anyone who receives the mark of this beast is going to be fully demonically possessed, body, soul, and spirit, by the Antichrist, by Satan himself. And it's Satan that causes everybody through the false prophet to worship the beast, but the beast, then the Antichrist, is in turn causing everybody to worship Satan. But he is the representation, the physical flesh and blood representation of Satan incarnate. In the same way, Jesus came as the representation of the Father, express image. So when we're looking at this, this is what's going to happen through this last 3.5 years. The Antichrist will rule all those days. It's going to turn into a one world global economy to survive the judgments. The image of the beast is set up. In Revelation 17, we read about a one world church that is going to be in support, working together with the 10 kingdoms. We already covered the 144,000 in heaven with the Lamb. And then at that same chapter, there's all these angels admonishing the world with the gospel, announcing the harlot church's fall, warning everybody against receiving the mark. The fourth angel signals Christ is about to begin the saint harvest. The angel signals the grape harvest. And the fifth angel gathers the ungodly to destroy. Now, those all happen at different times, but I want to go back to just a moment to talk about the two witnesses and what their purpose is. Because they are the most celebrated prophets of the Old Testament by the Jews, by Israel, they will be on the earth to win people to the Lord who are of Jewish descent. Because Paul said he would that all Israel be saved, and God has managed and focused on the Gentiles of the world, all the Gentiles. There's a fulfillment of the ending of the Gentiles until the time of the fulfillment of the Gentiles Jesus talked about. But what about the remaining house of Israel in terms of the Jewish descendants? This is where the two witnesses come into play. And there's going to be a humongous revival among the Jewish descendants. And they are going to hear the voice of the prophets, and they will not bow down to an image because they remember what happened to Daniel's 3 friends. Because they still are a nation that believes in God. And there are those believers from the Jewish standpoint of Judaism that they're not going to bow down to any Antichrist. They're not going to bow down unless they're among the category of those who will follow into the delusion and deception. But if any time the revival and harvesting of the Jewish descents is going to take place, it's going to take place at this time. And they too, because they're saved on this side during the time of the witnesses, they will be part of the Great Tribulation martyrs. That the Antichrist says, you cannot, in the false prophet says, you cannot buy or sell anything unless you got the mark. And so that's going to leave us in a predicament. Some people believe it's going to be an inserted biochip. I'm not ruling that out. Some people believe it's going to be some kind of nanobite kind of technology that is just put into our system, and so we can be discovered by satellites or wherever we are, whatever. There's all kinds of things that could develop and evolve into. But it's not beyond the possibility that this could also be a literal marking, because when you look at the Greek word for this term, mark, it's not used in any other place in the Bible or in the New Testament when referring to the mark of the beast. This literally in the Greek is a reference to something that stains you like ink. That is literally a mark. And I would like to present a possibility to you that electronics might not be in play anymore. Laptops, cell phones, what have you. Because when you look at everything else that's going on, the major upheaval, the earthquake, all the things that are going on, the trumpets, we may not be able to have access to electric grids anymore. And get thrown back into the ages where people actually had to have real books in their hands to read. That's why I prefer having this instead of just a cell phone. I prefer the hard printed material just in case the day comes, and possibly could come, that nobody is able to reach anybody in that way anymore. And so it would naturally then be a literal mark on the forehead or on the right hand. That being said, it's going to be a real challenge for anybody to stay alive, because once the bride of Christ has left, there still will be those who are the offspring of the bride. But in chapter 13, it says that he will now turn on the bride. Or chapter 12, is going to go after the offspring of the bride once she's taken out into the wilderness. So they can't get the mark, obviously. And so they're going to be martyred. And I want to jump to chapter 17 here just for a moment regarding this one world church. Verse 1. Then one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls came and talked to me, saying to me, come, I will show you the judgment of the great harlot who sits on many waters, with whom the kings of the earth committed fornication. That would be the 10 kingdoms, and 10 kings over those, and the inhabitants of the earth who were made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So he carried me away in the spirit in the wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast, which was full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Now, let me mention something about the 7 heads. These aren't like literal heads, you understand. This is imagery right here. And the 10 horns also is imagery. But the 10 horns, according to what Daniel spoke in his prophecy, correlating with Revelation's horns, they're 10 kingdoms. They're the 10 kingdom nations in the last days that she is working together with. But the 7 heads, I present to you as the possibility of representing the 7 great ideologies of the empires of history, beginning with Egypt, and then Assyria, Babylon, Media, Persia, Greece, Rome, and then all that emerging. So the 10 kingdom empire is going to be standing upon all the former ideologies that were brought into the world by those empires. And they still come and affect society culturally in many ways today, even in the education in however other things are presented to us ideologically. So she is going to be partnered with them, and all that ideology, that world humanism and worldview ideology behind. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet and adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls, having in her hand a golden cup full of abominations. It's one thing that Jesus hit the Pharisees up with. He says, you guys, you're like whitewashed sepulchers. You got the whole outside looking nice and white and shiny and pure, when inside you're just full of dead men's bones. So this is a church that's going to be inside full of corruption. And it goes on to say that the filthiness of her fornication, and on her forehead a name was written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and of the abominations of the earth. And then here I saw this woman drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I marveled with great amazement. And then the angel comes and describes to John the meaning of this woman and this beast. So she will have already been established, will already have been set up. I believe that the One World Church is already in motion. You'll find more and more churches from every denomination, and also there will be other world religions coming into play here. Because let's take Rome, for example. Rome had a lot of gods. Caesar was regarded as a god. And they, of course, assimilated the gods of other nations, including the God of the Hebrews, even though they didn't understand that that God was the God over all the earth. So the Antichrist, in a similar fashion, with this one world religion that will encompass all world religions coming under one umbrella, because ultimately he's making himself the main God, the main world religion that he wants everybody to go after. The world religion, the harlot church, will only be useful to him for a short amount of time to get his dirty work done. And she will be working again together with the commerce of the age, the oligarchs, the technocrats, and all that. So here, what's going to happen is in chapter 17 and chapter 18, we see the fall of this Babylonian system, this one world church. It's not a particular city, by the way. That's why when the whole Saddam Hussein thing and what was going on in Iraq, and he was building Babylon up, and all the end-time prophets were writing books about how this is the Babylon that is being spoken of in the book of Revelation. And I was telling people in my congregation, I said, don't buy into that. That's not, the Babylon in the book of Revelation is not a literal city. It is a symbolic city of the harlot church worldwide. And so when all of that came crashing down over there with the Desert Storm War, Babylon ceased to be built. And it says that would happen in the Old Testament. Once Babylon was destroyed as an empire, the prophet said, no more will it be rebuilt. It will never be rebuilt. So that was kind of looked over when they were talking about that in the last days. This is a symbolic of a one world church religion. She's a harlot of many harlots, of many gods, and she is going to be one ecumenical movement of all world religions, including the fallen church, the false church of Christendom, including Islamism. It's all going to come under that one umbrella. I believe that the Antichrist will convince a third of the saints that he is truly the literal Messiah that they've been waiting for. And these are going to be the ones that are biblically illiterate. These are the ones that will be easily deceived. These are the ones that are straddling the fence, living lukewarm or cold lives as Christians. They will be the first ones to go follow the train of his robe. The others, the Muslims, will probably follow him from the standpoint in that the Muslims also have an eschatology. They believe in the end times. They believe Jesus is coming back. They actually believe in the Jesus that you and I worship. They believe that he, though, was not the Messiah as we see him. They believe that he was one of the prophets prior to their prophet, Muhammad. But they do believe that he, which is in their Quran referred to as Isa, that he will come and be the John the Baptist forerunner of their great one, their Messiah that they're looking forward to seeing, the Mahdi, which means the great one. So they will see the Antichrist, perhaps, as the resurrection or the return of Isa, who is to be the forerunner of the Mahdi. Now, I explain all that in Countdown to Eternity. I take quite a lot of time on showing how that Islam will also align under this one world church, one world religious place. And then there will be the Judaism, the three main world religions, Christianity, Judaism, and Islamism. They are still waiting. The ones that don't believe Jesus is the Messiah, they're still waiting for the Messiah. And so he could convince them as well. And here's one reason why I believe this. And again, this is just a theory. I can't prove this, but all the patterns seem to be pointing in this direction, in that it's highly possible that he could be of Jewish descent. And so claiming that he is from the tribe of Judah, claiming that he is the long-awaited Messiah, claiming that he is the Esau to the Muslims, and claiming to those in Christianity that are clueless about what the book of Revelation, what the end times is revealing, they could also say, well, he's of Jewish descent. So he will deceive in such a great way that this will be like no other person on the planet. He will be Satan incarnate, meaning that Satan will possess this man. Satan will possess him fully and completely. And deception is going to be the most powerful weapon always of Satan and of the Antichrist, who will deceive the whole world along with the false prophet, pointing to him. Here he is. So because he will blaspheme every God and the God, he will set himself up as God in his temple, which is the one world church. He will eventually come to the place of such arrogance and pride, he won't want to share that throne with any other religion. And so he will throw them under the bus, and the kings of the world, they will destroy her, so that it's all going to be a religion of one man, the Antichrist himself. And no more need for all these other gods, no more need for all these other religions. It's all about me. This is pretty significant. But this is one way that God is going to deal with the harlot church. And all the kings of the earth and all the commercial merchants and everybody that benefited from the world religion being involved in all the trades of the world, they're going to be really weeping and crying over this. And what I'm doing is I'm just quoting Revelation chapter 17 and 18 to you, because I know there's not a lot of time that we'll have to just keep reading verse by verse. But this is where this is going.